This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Susie Gehring.
Stocks take it on the chin, hit by a 1-2 punch of weak technology and the ongoing drama over a bailout in Cyprus.
A growing health issue, CVS, the latest company, asking for more medical information from employees. How much should your employer really know about you?
And a tough decision. The housing market seems to be on the mend, so it's time to ask the age-old question, should you rent or buy? All that and more coming up. Good evening, everyone. Well, Tyler, a down day on Wall Street, and it seems like investors are starting to pay attention to bad news.
Certainly this week and certainly again today, Susie. After spending much of the year blissfully gliding over whatever troubling news there was, stocks today succumbed to a dose of reality. It came in two forms, earnings worries and Cyprus, where a banking crisis shows few signs of abating and the country's credit rating was cut. The Dow, though closing well off the lows of the session, nevertheless ended 90 points lower at 14,421. The Nasdaq down 31 and the S&P 500 falling further from its near record high, off 13 points today. Now, stocks got little help from more good news about housing. Sales of existing homes last month hit a 3-year high, while average home prices in January shot up 6.5% from a year ago. On the labor front, first-time jobless claims rose by only 2,000 last week, but it was enough to send the monthly average to a fresh 5-year low. No matter, today stock investors did what they haven't done much of this year at all, find trouble in the news. Until this week, stocks have led a charmed life in 2013. Day after day, the Dow played past the headlines. Its worst losing streak of the year, 2, and it's closed higher 7 out of every 10 trading days this year. But this week, after nearly 3 months of gains that would make for a pretty good year of returns, investors woke up. Those banking woes in Cyprus were a first jolt, a reminder that Europe's problems are far from solved. Then came earnings issues at 3 bellwethers, FedEx, Caterpillar, and Oracle, a transport, an industrial, a tech.
This market is not really ready to take off. The economy is not really ready to take off. It does give us a little pause, maybe across the board. Economy is slowing down, at least temporarily.
Ben Bernanke did calm the markets yesterday.
At this meeting, the committee judged that no adjustment was warranted.
Today, though, as investors look east to Europe and ahead to an earnings season promising little profit growth, 2013's charmed life for stocks seems so yesterday.
More now on the financial troubles in Cyprus, where the government is trying to come up with a plan to reorganize its banks by Monday. That's the deadline set by the European Union officials. If they don't, it could mean collapse of the entire banking sector. As Michelle Carusa Cabrera tells us, that fear is being felt on the streets.
Cyprus, yet another country in Europe where the devastation from the financial crisis is being felt throughout the population. Throughout Cyprus, lines could be seen all day long at the ATMs of the country's weakest bank, Laiki. The bank's customers desperate to take out cash because of rumors the bank was on the verge of failure.
This is not solidarity. We are being treated like third-class citizens, and we are very, very angry.
How much money did you take out?
I just took 1,000. I've been taking 1,000 every day. And personally, I'm taking this money in cash with me to the UK tonight.
Because?
Because we don't know what the future of our country holds.
The reason they're using the ATM? The banks have been closed nearly a week and won't open until Tuesday, earliest. Business owners deeply affected by the bank closures. The head of this fruit import business is worried about making payroll.
We are doing our best to expedite the cash collecting process in order to be able to pay our employees next week. Most shipping lines require that you pay in cash. So if you want to get some important goods out of the port, you have to pay in cash.
Bank employees likely to be on the losing end as well, and they know it, showing up in front of Parliament to protest in fear that their bank will be shut down.
Lies, totally. It's not a family. EU, it's Germany and other countries. They are not our friends because the members of family don't do this.
Many people here are so angry. They feel they have been treated unfairly by the Europeans, particularly the Germans, and they're deeply angry with the politicians who they say have led them astray. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Michelle Caruso Cabrera, Cyprus.
Our market guest tonight says investors should be concerned about what's going on in Cyprus and its impact on Europe. He's Andres Garcia Amaya, global market strategist at JP Morgan Funds. You know, Andres, tell us why U.S. investors should be concerned about what's going on in Cyprus. A lot of them think that there's no spillover effect over here.
Right. I think it's really important to look at Cyprus and not blow it out of proportion, but at the same time don't underestimate its risk. And its risk is that it does create question marks around the safety of deposits around the European Union. The whole point of creating a banking union is that a Cyprus bank is as safe as a German bank, and this does create a question mark.
Andres, is Europe for investors just simply too hot to touch right now?
I think if you look at individual companies, if you look at their balance sheets and you try to understand what is their drivers of growth, there are still opportunities, especially large corporations that have access to the emerging markets, and that's really where their growth is coming from. But overall, at the macro level, I do expect some headline risk this year. Let's not forget, this is a German election year, right? In September, Merkel has to convince her voters that she should be reelected, and I wouldn't put that past what's happening in Cyprus and what other headlines could come up during the duration of this year. Let's talk a little bit about things closer to home. Earnings, you heard in Tyler's report that we've had some disappointing earnings recently. You know, we're going to get a lot of reports over the next couple of weeks. Are they going to shape the direction of the markets? Well, first off, we had a weak market today, and I think it's important to take it in stride. We've had a great run, but it is concerning when the markets move up in a straight line, up or down. So some consolidation is actually healthy. Two, when it comes to earnings, we do expect earnings not to be too strong in the second quarter. Let's remember what just happened, right? We had the payroll tax cut going away. We had the sequester that's really going to start hitting in April, therefore the second quarter. So earnings in the short term might seem weak, but we do believe over the next couple of years, the earnings story could be pretty strong, especially when you look at the economy and the fundamental story, what's happening with housing and slowly what's happening to jobs.
So where should I put my money, Andres? If I want to be a broadly diversified global investor, what percentage of it right now, of my equity holdings, should be in the U.S. market, and what percentage in foreign markets, what percentage in emerging markets?
So first off, we are overweight in the U.S. equity markets over, for instance, other developed economies like Europe. I think a lot of the headline risk is going to actually send a lot of dollars back into the United States. And fundamentally, the U.S. economic story is improving. But just a comment on emerging markets, because you hit on something that I think is important. I think most investors globally are structurally underweight emerging markets. They might hold maybe 4 or 5% of emerging markets throughout the whole portfolio. Yet, if you look at the share out of whole world's market cap for emerging markets, it's 13%. So I do believe that people structurally are underweight and they need a little bit more exposure to emerging markets, which right now seem there's a lot of volatility there, but I think there's also a lot of upside. Andres, we used to always hear buy on the dips. I don't know if this is one of those times. Should people start picking up some stocks if they haven't been involved in this market rally, or is a serious pullback close by? I think you have to look at your options, right? So if you have a new dollar, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to put it in fixed income? Are you going to put it on cash or in equities? I think even at these levels, equities still look more appealing than the other options. So if you see some weakness, I would actually put that new dollar into equities. Why? Because everything else just looks so expensive. All right, lots of good information. Thank you so much, Andres. Andres Garcia Amaya, global market strategist at JP Morgan Funds.
Well, Susie, first the Senate voted for it, and now the House passing a stopgap spending bill with broad bipartisan support and sending it to the president's desk for his signature. The measure will keep the federal government up and running until the end of September, while lawmakers get back to work on a more comprehensive long-term budget for fiscal 2014 and beyond.
And after the bell, earnings surprise starts us off in Market Focus tonight. Nike reported a 55% jump in quarterly net income to 73 cents a share. That was 6 cents more than analyst estimates. Nike said worldwide future demand for its apparel and shoes rose 6% compared to the same period last year. Looking at the stock, it closed at 53.60, down more than 2%. That was during the regular session, and then it surged in after hours. Cisco Systems was the biggest loser in the Dow. Shares fell on an analyst downgrade from market perform to underperform. The analyst predicts a decline in routers, and Cisco could be challenged to transition to a software and service business model. Cisco lost almost 4%, closing at $20.84. And Oracle was the biggest NASDAQ loser. Investors reacted to that warning that we told you about last night, that Oracle's hardware revenue would shrink. The company also said on its earnings call today that its sales staff didn't do a good job on selling on the software side. Oracle shares have fell on heavy volume, closing at $32.30, down more than 9.5%.
And Salesforce.com, an Oracle competitor in cloud computing and customer relationship services, announced a 4-for-1 stock split after the close today. You don't see that very often. Salesforce was up on the day, ending at $172.73, before it spiked after hours on the news of that split. And Airgas, a company that makes industrial gases that other manufacturers use in their processes, warned that it may fall short in the current quarter because sales fell in February in a key division and didn't recover in March. Airgas was down just over 5%, closing at $97.96. One bright spot today, though, was Ross Stores. The discount retailer said its latest quarterly income jumped 23% on higher demand from bargain hunting shoppers. Ross says revenue at stores open at least a year, up 5%. Ross was up $3.35, to $58.05 at the close.
Here's another bright spot. This year's corn crop, especially in the wake of last year's devastating Midwest drought. Corn plantings this year are expected to be the highest in decades, and Jane Wells tells us what that means for farmers and consumers.
Farming is like housing. It's all about location, location, location.
I'm a bit nervous.
Nebraska corn farmer Jason Coles should be. He's coming off a horrible 2012 due to the drought.
I expected around 150 bushel average yield going into the year, and I am up with 75 bushel on my corn.
Kurt Mowry's Texas operation could not have been more different.
Our 2012 corn crop was excellent. It's probably the best corn crop we've ever raised down here.
Mowry already has corn coming out of the ground, and he's optimistic about 2013. Farmers are expected to plant the most acres of corn in 77 years. And if the crop is good, corn prices could fall as much as 40% and bring down the cost of everything else, especially beef. America's cattle herd is the smallest it's been in decades. Ranchers have been getting rid of animals because it costs too much to feed them. Texas rancher Bob McCann says his herd is 25% smaller than it used to be.
Until there's some really good relief in the drought situation, it's going to be hard to rebuild the herd.
Kurt Mowry says what happens next won't just impact American food costs, but global supplies.
If anybody has a marginal or a total crop failure, it's gonna start impacting worldwide the availability of those commodities on the food shelf. It's that critical. I've never seen it in my lifetime.
The National Weather Service isn't providing much hope. Its new spring forecast calls for warmer than normal temperatures with little relief from the drought. For Nightly Business Report, Jane Wells, Moore Park, California.
And coming up, first smoking, then cholesterol levels. Now one company is asking employees to weigh in or pay up for health insurance. Is it a motivation to get healthy or an invasion of privacy? First, though, let's take a look at how the international markets finished the day.
We don't have to tell you that the cost of health care is skyrocketing, especially for big companies providing coverage for thousands of workers. But there's a growing controversy about just how involved employers should get in the lives and personal information of those workers. Hampton Pearson explains.
The CVS drugstore chain, one of the nation's largest, is taking a hard line on weight control in the workplace, telling its 200,000 employees to participate in the company's health insurance, they must reveal health information, including weight, body fat, and blood pressure levels, or pay a $50 a month fine. That's $600 a year.
You said a $600 fine. Yeah, that seems pretty unreasonable.
The chief medical officer for the Rhode Island-based firm says it's not an invasion of privacy, but an incentive to improve employee health and reduce health care costs.
It's an incentive one way or the other. The way that we see it is that the company contributes a good deal to people's health insurance, and that people can get an additional contribution if they undertake this. Seems to make common sense to us.
Worker rights advocates say there's nothing really voluntary about asking workers to pay what could be a $600 a year penalty.
If you're looking at CVS, you're looking at a company that has a lot of low-wage workers, where $50 a month could make a significant difference.
A Kaiser Family Foundation survey finds 94% of large businesses now offer some kind of wellness program. Things like free health club memberships, nutrition counseling, even stop smoking campaigns. What's accelerating is the use of financial penalties to motivate behavior. Workers are adjusting.
If my job required it and I needed my job, yeah, I'd do it. I've got nothing to hide.
In a 2009 survey of 500 companies, 8% used financial penalties to motivate healthy behavior. Last year, that number jumped to 30%, according to Towers Watson, a risk management consulting firm. Healthcare experts also say draft regulations tied to implementing the Affordable Care Act increased dramatically financial incentives tied to wellness programs.
There really isn't anything else that the insurance industry or the employee benefits industry has shown that they can do to control healthcare costs.
CVS may be using what some might consider the stick approach tied to penalties. What's not yet apparent is how many firms will follow that trend. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Hampton Pearson in Washington.
We have two different points of view on this subject. Deborah Peel is the founder of Patients Privacy Rights Foundation, and Tracy Burns is the director of Northeast Human Resources Association. I'd like to ask both of you this question. We all want a healthier workforce. You know, how do we get there? Is it through rewards or is it through penalties? Deborah, why don't you start us off?
Well, penalties, of course, and these penalties in particular are very coercive. They're very hurtful. And most of the people that are working there are probably working a second job already. So it's cruel. It's cruel, and it's an insult to dignity. But worse than that, there are serious privacy problems. First of all, Americans have the right to health information privacy. The reason is this is very sensitive information, and it's been clear for decades that employers and insurers use this information to make decisions about hiring, firing, and promotion. So the privacy of health information and the lack of control of data in electronic systems and wellness programs require the collection of lots of sensitive data.
Let's get Tracy in on this conversation. Rewards or penalties, Tracy?
Well, I think it depends on the individual. I think, as you know, health risk assessments have been around since the 80s, so this is really nothing new. It's really just how it's being packaged. So it comes down to the individual and how they're motivated, and whether financial motivation works for some people and coercion or perceived coercion is going to work. It will be the proof in the pudding. I think like with a lot of wellness programs, it takes a long time for us to see the fruits of the labor, but I commend CVS for being willing to implement a wellness program because it's really not just about the bottom line, it's about overall well-being. And when we come to work, we don't just bring ourselves, our work selves, we bring our entire selves. And studies have proven that healthy employees equal productive employees.
Ms. Peel, I'm curious as to why you think that the practice of supplying or having to submit to a test where you would be weighed, have your body mass index measured, presumably your blood sugar taken and your cholesterol taken, is a cruel procedure. I believe that was your word. I'm not sure I understand why you perceive that to be cruel, and why, on the other hand, someone might not see that as, well, that's information that I could use, perhaps, if I didn't have it already, to live a more healthy lifestyle.
The cruelty is about the financial penalties that most people can't afford. The problem with the blood tests are when you get blood tests, they're collected by a lab, data is collected about you, personal data about your body and mind. The public is very sensitive about this. They know that employers and insurers and wellness plans and labs and electronic data about health is not secure and it's not private. They believe that these systems are not ready for prime time. They know that we have no data map of where all this data goes, who uses it, and what for. But it's very clear that this information is used to discriminate against people. The most important thing I'd like to say, though, about health plans is this month's Health Affairs did a very careful study, and they found that wellness programs basically don't work. They're one size fits all. These illnesses that we are having epidemics of are happening because not just of factors within the person, but there are social factors, cultural factors, and corporate factors as well, such as very addictive, terrible, cheap food.
All right, can we just get maybe a short explanation from you of what's the alternative? I mean, the status quo in our country right now is not working. We have an obesity epidemic, we have a heart disease epidemic, and we have a healthcare cost epidemic. So what do we do? Real quickly.
First of all, the alternatives are to find the solutions not only in the individual by working with individuals, but by looking at the larger factors in society. We don't have epidemics because suddenly a whole bunch of people in this nation are not responsible. These are complex problems. So there are going to be, we have to find the problems in the individuals, but in our culture, in our food chain, in our workplaces to fix this, because wellness programs don't work.
Tracy, my employer requires me to submit that I haven't used tobacco products over the past year or pay a penalty, and that feels like a reasonable, to me, a reasonable use of the expression of the employer's interest here. My question for you, though, is: are we going to a system where individuals' health care costs they'll pay more for insurance if they have certain personal attributes or certain behaviors or certain habits than somebody else? Variable pricing?
Well, potentially so, and it's not much different than what's been happening for quite some time with the incentive plans. So I think we have to be very careful about what we're penalizing people for and what's preventative. And a lot of the wellness programs that corporations have been involved in for quite some time are based on preventative measures and lifestyle things that you can change, things that are within your control.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. This is obviously a topic that, as a country, we're going to continue to debate, and a conversation will be ongoing. Thank you both. Deborah Peel, founder of Patient Privacy Rights Foundation, and Tracy Burns, director of Northeast Human Resources Association.
This one, Susie, really did hit a nerve in lots of people today around the country. All right, coming up, our special series on housing continues with a look at renting versus buying a home. Which could be best for you in today's economy? But first, let's take a look at where treasuries, they were up today. Currencies and commodities closed. With home prices on the rise and mortgage rates still near historic lows, a lot of would-be home buyers are looking to jump in while others remain cautious. So in today's housing market, is it wiser to rent or own your home? Diana Olick looks for some answers.
So this is the place. Newlyweds Brian and Allie Earl are ready to buy their first home together.
They're clean.
While owning a home seems daunting, renting just doesn't add up anymore.
To be honest, the rents keep going up. I think we've seen our rent go up over 20% in the last 2 years, and you don't really have control over your property.
Rents are rising at an annual rate of 3.5%, according to Axiometrics. But home prices are rising faster. So should you buy or rent? Analysts at Trulia say it's 44% cheaper to buy, but only if you stay in your home for 7 years, itemize your deductions, and get a 3.5% mortgage rate.
Right now, with how low interest rates are, they're actually below 4% in this area, so it's the perfect time for us to do it, especially for a good investment for us for our futures.
Still, rental buildings are largely full, partially because so many potential home buyers now have damaged credit, but also because many younger Americans want neither the hassle nor the risk.
It's so low maintenance. That's the best thing.
Susie Bogus has been renting in D.C. for 6 years and admits she would pay more to rent than own.
I have a lot of friends who purchased when they thought it was a great deal, and then they ended up losing tens of thousands of dollars just in a few years.
Another barrier to home ownership is lack of supply. The realtors today reported a small increase in the number of homes for sale, but it's just not enough, especially given the competition from cash-heavy investors.
Everywhere we've looked, there's at least five or six offers going in within a 48-hour period.
That's why now even some home builders like Lennar are getting into the multifamily apartment business.
We're bullish both on the rental side of the business and on the single family side of the business. We have underserved production for probably 7 years now. And as we look ahead, both on the multifamily side and on the single family side, we're going to need a lot more production.
Yeah, this is actually pretty spacious too.
Because at this point in the housing recovery, the rent versus buy debate still has no winner. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Diana Olick in Washington.
You know, Tyler, my husband and I just went through this process with our adult children who were going to be in these training programs for 3 years, 4 years, decided to rent rather than buy because it's that 7-year rule that Diana was talking about.
They weren't likely to stay there that long. Yeah. My rule is whenever Matheson buys, you sell, because I've managed to time the top of every real estate market I have ever been in.
Let me know when the next
I'll
time.
tell you. I'll give you a hint. I'm not moving anytime soon.
Anyway, that's it for us. Nightly Business Report for tonight. I'm Susie Garrett. Thanks so much for watching.
And I'm Tyler. Time the Market Matheson. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.
I'm Susie Garrett with a Nightly Business Report news brief. Wall Street got a bit rattled today after some weak earnings reports and the worsening banking crisis in Cyprus just as that country's credit rating was cut. On Wall Street, the Dow lost 90 points to close at 14,421. The Nasdaq down 31. The S&P 500 falling further from its near record high, off 13 points. Stocks got a little help from more good news about housing. Sales of existing homes last month hit a 3-year high, while average home prices in January shot up 6.5% from the same month last year. On the labor front, first-time jobless claims rose by only 2,000 last week, but it was enough to send the monthly average to a fresh 5-year low. Be sure to tune into Nightly Business Report right here on your public television station.